They left me bleeding in a wrecked car to save a hair appointment and tried to cash in my life insurance before I even flatlined. 5 years later, I came back, not for revenge, but to own the empire they nearly killed me for. I remember the sound of my breath before the crash. Slow, uneasy, the kind of breath you take when you're pretending everything's fine even though your gut keeps whispering, something's not right. I was 17, young enough to still say yes when I should have said no, old enough to know the cost. My parents had handed me the rusted silver sedan they barely kept running. Dad tossed me the keys like I was a valet. Pick Emily up from her dance class, then get her to the salon. Don't be late. Her hair is more important than your excuses. It was always like that. I was the errand girl, the free chauffeur, the substitute parent, the fallback when everyone else had real plans. And even knowing that, I still said yes, because part of me hoped, maybe this time, Mom would say, "Thanks, honey," or Dad would pat my shoulder. Recognition, even fleeting, was like oxygen. I lived off scraps, but that night, it rained, not drizzle, not mist. It poured, the kind of torrential rain that turns streets into rivers and headlights into blurry ghosts. The roads in our town flooded fast, and the sedan's tires were practically bald. Dad never thought tire treads were urgent expenses. 5 minutes from the salon, the world flipped. One wrong turn, one missed break, one blinding flash of headlights. I never even screamed. The metal screamed for me. Glass exploded. My arm hit the steering wheel with a sickening crunch. Something cracked. Then, silence. When I came to, blood coated my lips. My chest burned. My left leg was numb. The passenger's side was crumpled inward, like a fist had punched through the door. I was trapped. My phone had vanished under the seat. The airbag reeked of chemicals and the fabric seared my chest. And then headlights. I blinked. Blurred. A car approached. A black SUV. Our black SUV. My parents. Relief bloomed in my throat. I thought I was saved. But what happened next would shatter every illusion I'd ever held. They pulled over. The doors flung open. My mom ran not to me, but to the passenger side. Emily was crying. A small scratch on her cheek. That was it. She's going to be late. Mom shrieked. I told you this car was junk. Dad barked, surveying the front like a mechanic. I groaned. I cried out. My voice was barely a whisper. I think my arm's broken. Nothing. They didn't come to my side. Didn't ask if I could move. Didn't even kneel beside me. Emily clutched Mom's waist like a porcelain doll, her hair untouched. They charge a fee if you're more than 10 minutes late, Mom muttered. I whispered, Dad, please. I can't feel my leg. He looked at me. Just once. If you can drive yourself into a wreck, you can figure out how to get out. Then they left. They drove away, left me bleeding, broken, and barely conscious. Rain pounded the broken windshield. I don't know how I found the strength. Maybe it was survival. Maybe it was rage. But I unbuckled, screamed through pain, dragged myself across shattered glass to the passenger side, kicked the door open with my good leg, and crawled onto the wet roadside. A stranger stopped 20 minutes later. A woman in her 50s. She called 911. She held my hand until the paramedics came. She told me I wasn't alone. There was 6 hours of bright lights and blinding pain. Fractured femur, dislocated shoulder, gashes along my ribs. They had to sedate me to stitch me up. When I woke, I was alone. My parents hadn't come. Not that night. Not the next morning. Not until the hospital demanded a guardian's signature for treatment bills. Mom walked in with a Starbucks in hand. You're going to have to pay this off. We're not rich. Dad crossed his arms. Maybe next time you'll drive safer, Emily. She posted a picture from the salon that night. At car crash drama, but I still got the curls. The comments. Your family is iconic. Slay. Hope your sister's okay, but you ate dot and no one knew. No one cared that I almost died. And in that moment, something in me died instead. That was the day I stopped being their daughter and started becoming something else. Recovery wasn't just painful, it was humiliating. The hospital transferred me to a rehab center an hour away. My parents didn't want the liability of caring for me at home, they said. Liability? Like I was a contract gone wrong. They turned my bedroom into a storage space while I lay on a narrow cot in a sterile room that smelled of disinfectant and old fear. I knew because Emily posted a TikTok room tour titled, "New Walk-in Closet." She pinned the camera past my photos still taped to the walls, now behind boxes labeled Christmas decor, garage sale, and miscellaneous junk. I watched that video with tears crusting on my cheeks. I didn't cry often, but that day, I broke. I was invisible. The nurses were kind though distant. They had a million other patients. One, however, stood out. Dr. Malik. He wasn't part of the rehab team. He was a trauma consultant who rotated through once a week. He asked questions no one else did. How are you sleeping? Are the nightmares constant or do they fade? Do you remember the crash? He didn't ask like a professional checking boxes. He asked like someone who had been there. I lied at first, smiled, pretended I was healing fine. But he saw through it. And one day, I cracked. I wasn't the only thing that broke that night. I whispered. My family did too. He didn't press, just nodded. And that silence meant more than words. It took 6 weeks for my leg to begin functioning again. My arm is longer. My heart, still shattered. When I returned home, no one looked up. No one said welcome. Just Emily sighed. Ugh. Does this mean she's back already? I was using her desk. Mom pointed at the dining room. Don't get blood on the cushions. They're new. So I cooked. I cleaned. I folded laundry with one arm. I scrubbed floors. I shrunk myself to fit their vision of silence. But I listened. And I noticed. The mail. The finances. The insurance forms. One night, I heard them arguing. Not in whispers, full voice. Shrill and angry. She was supposed to be gone. My mom hissed. We would have had enough for the salon expansion. She didn't die, Carol. You think I wanted that mess? I stopped breathing. I waited until they went to bed. Then I checked the office drawer. A policy. A small life insurance plan was taken out the year I turned 16. Labeled College Fund Alternative. But after the crash, they tried to cash it in. I found the rejection letter from the insurance company. They had prepared for me to die. I had survived. That was the inconvenience. So I stopped crying. I stopped asking why. I started planning. I moved out quietly at 19. No goodbye. No announcement. Just a note on the kitchen table that read, "Thanks for everything." It wasn't sincere, but it sounded polite enough to be ignored. I'd been working 2 jobs for a year, part-time barista by day and call center operator by night. Neither was glamorous, but every paycheck was a step closer to freedom. And no one in my house noticed my late hours or the stack of textbooks I hid under the bed. I was invisible. They didn't question why I stopped eating dinner with them, or why my laundry disappeared like clockwork. I rented a room from Mrs. Langley, a retired English teacher who smiled with her whole face and didn't ask questions. The first night, she served soup and said, "You can stay as long as you like, Elena." No one had ever said that to me before. At 20, I enrolled in an online psychology program using scholarship money and the savings I guarded like gold. I devoured every module: trauma, behavioral patterns, familial dysfunction. The more I learned, the more my childhood made a grotesque kind of sense. My parents weren't just cold, they were textbook narcissists. And I wasn't broken. I was conditioned. I volunteered at community centers on weekends. I answered hotlines for abused teens. I wrote blog posts under a pseudonym, River Voice. Anonymous stories. Raw and brutal. And people wrote back. Hundreds of them. Thousands. We built a community out of pain. I was 23 when Dr. Aidan Malik crossed paths with me again. I was giving a talk at a mental health awareness panel when he walked in, late and windblown. Our eyes met briefly. Recognition flickered. Afterward, he waited by the back exit. "You've changed," he said softly. "So have you," I replied. But my voice wavered. We got coffee. Then another. Conversation stretched late into the night. He never asked too much, never filled silence with pity. When I told him about the blog, about the insurance, about how I clawed my way out, he didn't say, "You're strong." He said they were cowards. It was the first time I felt seen. By 24, I had a degree, a professional license, and a growing Reputation as a trauma counselor. I wore blazers now. My hair was always pinned. I moved like someone in control. But underneath, I still remembered crawling through glass with blood in my mouth. Then, I heard through an old coworker that their salon was under pressure. Business was slow. The building's co-owner, an aging investor with no heirs, was looking to sell. I made my offer in silence. 6 months later, the papers were signed. 50% of the salon was mine. They had no idea. I waited. I waited until Mom scheduled the salon's biggest annual event, a spring showcase for influencers, brides, and vendors. She bragged about it in her bridge club. Emily teased it on Instagram with pastel-colored reels. Then I called the landlord. Then I bought him out. The building, the lease, the locks, all mine. 2 weeks before the event, I walked in after hours. The receptionist stared at me. "Here," I said, handing her a letter. "You work for me now." She blinked, then nodded. I changed the appointment system, installed new security cameras, ordered custom signage. On the eve of the event, I replaced every welcome poster with a single message: "Event cancelled. New management. Contact Dr. Rivers for details." Yes, Rivers, my new legal surname, a tribute to the blog, to Rebirth. The next morning, I returned, dressed in black slacks and a deep green blazer, clipboard in hand. Mom's jaw dropped when she saw me. Emily's iced coffee slipped from her fingers and shattered on the tile. Dad, of course, was there for the glory. I walked to the front, calm, measured. "You'll need to collect your belongings," I said. "This property is now under my name. You are not on the lease. This is our salon." Mom shrieked, "Not anymore." Emily burst into tears. Dad demanded proof. I handed him a letter from my attorney. Mom's voice cracked. "You're not our daughter anymore." I smiled. I never was. Apparently, they had left me bleeding. I left them stunned. That should have been the end. But narcissists don't die quietly. They morph into victims. Within days, I became the villain of their story. The mentally unstable daughter. The ungrateful liar. Emily posted throwback photos with captions like "Some people never heal. They just hurt others." They didn't know. I had everything. Hospital records, 911 logs, the insurance denial letter, TikTok clips, screenshots. I published an anonymous blog series titled "When Love is a Lie." It exploded. Thousands shared. The local news picked it up. The salon's business dried up. Their license lapsed. Their reputation was erased. I opened the Resilience Room, a therapy center for teens like me, in that same building. On opening day, I gave a speech. I didn't name names. I once bled in a car while the people I loved rushed to an appointment. Today, I hold the keys to the place they left me to die for. This space is for every soul who's been silenced. You are not alone. They clapped. They cried. And I realized I didn't need revenge. I needed the truth. Then, a letter arrived. From Emily. No apology. Just bitterness. "How does it feel to ruin your own family?" I didn't reply. I just smiled. Because I didn't ruin a family. I escaped one. And I built something better. The day the letter arrived, I almost didn't open it. It came in a plain white envelope with no return address. Just my name, Dr. Elena Rivers, and the clinic address typed neatly. It looked official, but I had seen enough legal threats, scams, and unhinged pleas from my parents' supporters to be numb to most surprises. But something about this envelope made me pause. Maybe it was the weight. Maybe it was the silence that seemed to fall over the room the moment I held it. Inside, there was a single page, one sentence, and a USB drive. "You don't know the whole story. Watch this before you decide you've won." There was no signature, just that sentence. I stared at it for a long time. My hands trembled. For the first time in years, fear crept up my spine like a cold shadow. Was this another attempt to guilt me? Or worse, was there still something I didn't know? I plugged the drive into my laptop in the clinic's back office, where no one could see me flinch. The video file was dated the night of the crash. At first, all I saw was a black screen, then dashboard camera footage, a shaky recording from A nearby vehicle that had been parked down the road. Headlights illuminated the wreck. I saw myself in the driver's seat. Limp, bloody. My head was lolling to the side. Then their SUV arrived. I remembered that part. But what I hadn't known what the camera showed was what happened next. Dad pulled out his phone. Dialed. "I think she's gone," he said into the receiver. "Check the policy. I'll text the number now." My mother paced around the SUV, biting her nails. "She's still breathing. What if someone sees? Then we say we were on our way to the salon and she wrecked alone." Dad muttered. Mom hissed, "Get Emily in the car. We'll say she rode with us." They staged it. The scene. The story. They left me not out of panic, but calculation. I closed the laptop. Tears didn't come. Rage did. The kind that shakes your ribs from the inside out. They hadn't just failed me. They had tried to erase me. I contacted a lawyer the next day. Not to sue, but to protect. We locked down every part of the clinic. Changed passwords. Doubled security. If this were the last act of their game, I would not be blindsided again. Aidon noticed I was distant. He came by after hours with takeout. And silence. He didn't push. Just placed his hand on mine. Finally, I told him, "They tried to make sure I died. Not emotionally. Literally." He didn't flinch. "I always knew there was more," he said. "But the difference now is you're not that girl anymore." He was right. I released the footage anonymously through the same blog that had started it all. Not out of vengeance, but to protect others. There were more like me. Too many. The story went national. Police reopened the case. Not for murder, there was no death, but for attempted insurance fraud and negligence. Enough for the investigation. Emily released a statement online claiming she had no idea and was heartbroken. But the damage was done. The world had seen, and I had the final lock in my hand. At a press conference for the Resilience Room expansion, I stood before a crowd of reporters, survivors, and supporters. I once bled out in a car while my family drove away. I said, voice steady, "But I lived, and I learned." Some legacies we inherit, others we rebuild. This clinic is for the rebuilders. Applause thundered. Later that night, I returned home. My real home. The one I built. There was a package at the door. A photo album. Childhood pictures. Notes in the margins. My handwriting. Memories they couldn't erase. No note. No threat. Just proof. I smiled. Because I wasn't angry anymore. I had unlocked every door they tried to close and walked through it stronger.